Let's do our predictions.
My official answer is they're done. I know inflation jumped up from 2.8 to 3.3.
You think they're done?
I think they're done, yeah.
I think you're insane.
I think there's another one coming.
Lesley knows what the hell she's talking about.
I do.
Welcome to the Tom Storey Show with Steve Karrasch and Tom Storey, where we discuss everything real estate or whatever else is on our minds.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Tom Storey Show. I appreciate you being here. If you are watching us on YouTube and you have not already, Steve, the subscriber count is getting close to 3,000. We continue to grow, and honestly, it means a lot to us that you guys are showing up every single week and clicking that button because we know your time is valuable, and the fact that you spend it listening to us, well, I'm not going to convince you otherwise. Steve, you got something you want to jump in on this quick?
But only 35% of the people watching are subscribed, so click the subscribe button. Like, okay, it's free. Click the button, then we're good.
All right. Well, there you go. We appreciate you being here. And if you're listening on the audio platforms, if you have not already and you're enjoying the show, make sure to let us know what's going on Apple Podcast reviews. Into today's guest, I'm very, very excited to introduce Lesley Kennedy. She is the team leader of the Kennedy Sisters team in Oakville. She is part of the national top 1% for the LePage Chairman's Club, and that's how I got to know Les. I think we met maybe 2019 was the first time. Welcome to the podcast. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. Should be fun.
This is going to be fun. You've been on my list for a long time, and I'm really happy that you said yes to come on. So I wanted to try something new today. Normally we ask the guests, like, who are you? And you go through your life story. But I want to hit you with a few quick questions to get the people to understand, like, who's Lesley. So number one, how many years as a real estate agent?
Almost 17.
17. Number two, what's the most expensive property you've ever sold?
Close to 8 million.
8 million. Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's crazy. Number three, the least expensive property you've ever sold.
80 grand.
80 grand. And was that at the beginning of your career? What was that?
Probably about 3 years in, power of sale.
Yeah.
In some dumpy neighborhood in Toronto.
Fair enough.
It was like bed bugs everywhere. It was enjoyable.
Gotcha. That's a Karrasch special, as we call it. That's a Steve listing special. How large is the team right now?
5 licensed realtors.
Okay. And the number one thing you love about real estate and the number one thing you hate about real estate, being a real estate agent?
The people. And
you love
the people.
The people and the people. Yeah.
That's a perfect, honest answer. I would agree with that. It's like a great industry until you have to deal with certain people. So, Lesley, we've known each other back to 2019. We've gone on all the trips together, and that's been a lot of fun. But on a business level, you've been crushing it for longer than I've even been in this industry. So just a little bit of background on, always in Oakville. Did you live there? Did you start the team there? Were you always in real estate? Where did you start before that?
So grew up in Oakville, and my older sister and I actually started our company. She was in Toronto, thought she'd relocate to Oakville. It's where we know people, our network. She left the team about 5 years in. My younger sister joined, and we kind of grew from there. So I live in Oakville, raised my kids in Oakville, and
And the Oakville market, like, when people tell me like, oh, Toronto's so expensive, I'm like, well, have you gone west a little bit and see what's going on over there? What does it cost to buy in Oakville today? Like, what do you get for your money?
So I always actually think it's hilarious because people come from Toronto all the time and they're like, oh, I can buy a mansion, right? I'm going to sell my semi in Toronto and I'm going to have some palatial mansion in Oakville. And then they start looking at the prices. They're like, oh, okay, well, I could buy a nice semi again, or maybe like a small detached. So like average home prices are for a detached home is over 2 million.
Wow. So it's more expensive than Toronto.
Well, you can, like, if you go north of the QEW, so the Oakville and Burlington too are very divisive by the QEW. Mm-hmm. Most expensive real estate being closer to the lake, obviously. If you go north, your entry level detached home is around 1.2.
1.2.
Which there's not a ton of. And when you're looking at a townhouse, you're like at 1.1.
Steve is so shocked by the prices, he just turned off his camera.
Is my camera off?
No, you're back on. You're back on.
Sorry, I think my 700-year-old computer, I was just actually looking for Oakville because I know it's there. I just didn't know where it was.
So how far from, it's like what, a 30-minute drive from Toronto with traffic, maybe 40, 45?
Well, I used to, back in the day, do reverse commute. I used to live in Toronto after university and then commute back to Oakville. And yes, then it was 30 minutes. Now, depending on where you're going in the city, it could be an hour, hour and a half.
Crazy. Can I put this into like Southern Ontario? I'm just looking at the map right now. It's halfway to Hamilton.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah, halfway to Hamilton. Okay, cool. I get it.
Is Hamilton like a landmark point?
Well, it's just the next for us. I mean, hey, they got a CFL team, right? So they're halfway there. Why is it so expensive if it's not in the city?
The lake. Our downtown core is probably one of the biggest attractions for people. So we have like an actual core, right, of the town. It's still called a town, even though it's actually a city. So people come to visit here. I mean, when you were locked down for COVID, we were literally in a tourist town. So my office is on Lakeshore, right in the core of downtown Oakville. I live in close proximity to it. And there would literally just be like a car lineup for like half an hour to get into the core. It was insane. And even now it's like a huge draw for people to come that are from surrounding areas. So
what are
we
they
have a
coming
lot of
for?
big box stores.
Okay.
Big box stores, also like nice other retail stores, very expensive if you're commercial to rent on the street. And you can walk to the pier and the lake and the waterfront, and it's kind of like something to do, right?
Those homes on like closer to the water, which would be like the higher end of the market, what are they comparable to price wise? Is that like Rosedale pricing? It's not Bridle Path pricing, but it's got to be up there, right?
Close to Bridle Path.
Really? So we're talking like $6, $10, $15 million
on lakefront. A lot could sell for 10 million plus. Just a lot. So one of the most expensive listings ever was the Interbrew House. He replicated like a castle, and that was listed for over 60 million a couple of years ago.
Did it sell?
Initially, yeah, it did sell. We're not sure what exactly transpired there. It only sold for 34 million, I think.
Only 34 million. Holy moly. Do you know who bought it?
Yeah, I know the people.
Oh, you know the actual people. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So these like high end stuff on the water, is it new money? Is it generational money? Is it family money? Like, who are these people buying this type of real estate?
So in the past, it was generational money, right? Like we had the Eaton estate and et cetera, et cetera. Now it's big presidents of big companies, like President Bell lives in Oakville, people like that, or foreign money.
Interesting. And have you noticed any difference since there's a foreign buyer ban put in at the beginning of this year? Has that changed anything, or is the money already here?
When they put that ban in, it collapsed two predominant neighborhoods in Oakville because there's a huge draw to the schools in Oakville. They rank extremely high. So we get a lot of people looking in kind of the OT school district or the Abbey Park school district. So when they put that ban in, those markets died. Now we still have a ton of them. So if you're selling like a heritage property or something like that, it's really hard to get that sold because they are dominating our buyer pool right now. But the recent stuff, no, hasn't really affected it.
Is there any difference between the foreign buyer tax, like the effect of the foreign buyer tax versus the foreign buyer ban? Was it like the rich people were still like, yeah, cool, I'll pay 15 or 20% tax on $6 million? Or is it the foreign buyer ban that stopped it all?
It was a tax.
It was, yeah. Okay.
Interesting.
Same thing here.
The ban, nothing, really.
We did have stories of, and I saw it on one property ever, where we had a hobby farm in Richmond, which is where the airport is here in Vancouver. And there were people like phoning us saying, we're getting off a plane from Shanghai at 11:30 a.m. We're coming to see the property. Can you meet us there at 12:15? And they were offering, I mean, it was, and the whole string of hobby farms is now like 20,000 square foot homes, right? They used to be like 17,000 or 1,700 square foot homes with a hobby farm out the back. Now they got, let's call them basketball courts and tennis courts out the back and 20,000 square foot homes. So it was a real factor, but that ended in 2016 here when they brought in the foreign buyer tax. And they brought in our foreign buyer tax retroactive. So they actually said everybody that bought already, even if you're not closed yet, you're still paying the tax, which is crazy.
Interesting.
I guess the tax and the ban of foreign buyers, because what it sounds like is like the big money coming in was what they were trying to stop. So maybe actually like the higher end listings are suffering the most from that, where like, anything sub $2 million, they weren't buying that anyways. Or maybe their kids were or something like that. But it would be interesting to see how much of an impact it actually made. Like to the average consumer buying a property, competing with someone that wasn't a Canadian citizen before that all came in, right?
Well, actually, not necessarily. So we saw it actually in a lot of traditional homes, right? Like, so stuff that was around $2 million.
Okay.
Because oftentimes they buy these homes and their kid goes to school, but they don't live in these houses necessarily, or they were buying them for investment purposes.
Are they sitting empty?
Some.
Interesting.
That became an issue in Vancouver. It for sure, because like Vancouver, it was like the foreign Chinese money that everybody was like, okay, well, guess how many people are over there, right? So if you have the top 1% of the top 1% buy their vacation $10 million home in downtown Vancouver or the west end of Vancouver, it's not that many people for them, right? Like they can easily do that and drive up our real estate prices. Where we didn't see it was anywhere else. I think what happened for us, though, being I'm in the suburbs, and really it was kind of the domino effect from that, right? So if somebody used to have $1 million home and it got bid up to $3 million, and then they came out here and they were like, oh, that $500,000 home that I'm moving to, well, now that went up to $750 in 2015, right? It's double that now, easy. But that was kind of the rebound effect, or whatever you call that. I guess the echo effect afterwards, right? So I guess that's the dominoes falling down. So but Oakville, is that really the case there? Because I mean, it's always been high end, right? Has it always been high end?
It's a really interesting little town. I think, there's a huge draw for executives. So we get a lot of expats and stuff. So when they're coming over here, their companies are directing them to Oakville. Like if you're not liking the city, then you're probably like Oakville. It has high streets. So a lot of people like to be able to walk to stuff. And if you have the money, right, then they buy because they can walk to a restaurant, pub, whatever. We actually in Oakville have two. So we have downtown Oakville and then we have Brawny. So there's been a lot of gentrification in Brawny. Nobody ever talks about it really, but the town has put a huge focus on that for the last 20 years kind of thing. So they have a really nice waterfront. They've ripped down like the old mall and rebuilt that. So, yeah.
And Les, we have been talking about like what makes Oakville unique. And you said there's a few bylaws. And so I just like my backyard in Toronto, We had this like one patch of grass that's like, no matter what I ever did, it's not growing. So I gave up and I got fake turf put in, and it's amazing. I'm so happy I did it. What I found out recently is if I ever go to Oakville, that's not allowed to happen. Is that true?
Well, in your backyard, yes, but not your
Okay.
front yard. So Oakville, it's funny because I've lived here almost my entire life outside of university in a small stint in Toronto and then Burlington. But um, I recently got reacquainted with one of my friends from university, and she worked for the town of Oakville for years, and she was like head of zoning. And we were talking, and she's like, "You realize like all these all these things are just for Oakville. So like you can't have a clothesline. They're trying to ban currently like all gas motored lawnmowers, leaf blowers. So if you were to drive like down Lakeshore, probably 80% or more of all those houses are on massive lots, right? Like 150 by 200, whatever. They all have landscaping companies, like all
Right.
the time. Imagine doing that with like a battery powered
No, it'd be impossible.
leaf blower, like insane, right? Um, we actually have no space for anybody that's homeless. Oakville literally ships them to London. And then if London doesn't have capacity, they go to Hamilton.
What do you mean
Yeah,
ships
it's
them?
kind of,
Where
they
get
like put them on a bus and they
seriously?
go, yeah, 100%.
Wow.
Is it a city plan? What is that?
It's just part of what happens in the town of Oakville.
So wait
I
a minute.
mean,
Let me.
everybody
You mentioned
knows about.
two things. Let me. Sorry, let me interrupt. You mentioned two things. So one, we're gonna go green and have only electric, quieter, I'm assuming, lawn equipment. But we don't want you to put your dirty laundry out on the line and air dry it and save the environment that way.
No one wants to
So-
see Steve's boxers flapping in the wind. This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by Doormat.ca. Everyone is looking for a real estate lawyer that they can trust. So in Ontario, you're going to need a real estate lawyer to close a property. So whether you're buying or selling, you're going to need a real estate lawyer to help you. Doormat is Ontario's real estate lawyer now. Now, it's an online real estate law firm. So it's basically taking what you've experienced before with real estate lawyers to the 21st century, and it brings transparency and simplicity to the real estate transaction, which typically for a lot of people is like a black box. They don't really know what's going on. They're like, has the transaction actually closed? Well, Doormat is going to make that a lot better for you moving forward.
With Doormat, you get a personalized dashboard that enables you to track the progress of your closing, share information with your lawyer as needed, and access important documents whenever you need them. Use Doormat to close your real estate transaction in Ontario, and you get a real estate lawyer with personalized service and a custom dashboard to help you stay on top of everything that is happening with your purchase or sale. If you're buying or selling a property in the province of Ontario, Canada, reach out to Doormat.ca today and tell them that you heard about their services on the Tom Storey Show.
I've looked at a lot of these programs before, and Doormat knows what they're doing. I would highly recommend them, and I hope you check out their services. And now, back to the show.
That
because
is
that
so
is
funny.
not aesthetically pleasing.
But it is environmentally friendly. So
Mhm.
those are, oh, that's funny. That's contradictory.
Contradiction?
I mean, is it
Yeah.
no different than like a condo building says you can't, hang flags from your windows and that kind of stuff, but this is just an entire suburb, right? But that's interesting because you have freehold ownership of these properties and there's no HOA fee, right? It's not like you're just paying taxes to Oakville and they're saying this is what you can do. And are they strict on these regulations? Like, is anyone listening to this hanging up their laundry right now, worried about the city's going to come knock on their door?
Well, I mean, recently I actually sold a house with AstroTurf lawn.
Okay.
So
It's like if
whatever.
your neighbors complain, right?
Exactly, yeah. And it depends where you live too, right? So like we have a heritage district and it's pretty strict. And the people in the community are very aware of what their neighbors are doing and they want it to look a certain way, right? They're paying big dollar and They are making sure that their properties retain their values. Yeah, it's interesting.
Can I make a wild statement here?
Mm,
Maybe there's a lot of NIMBYism in Oakville. Don't want new construction, don't want things to change. Is that a fair statement to make?
definitely. And I think it's ironic because I have a lot of downsizers right now. And for years, that same generation fought and fought and fought to not have any condo builds built, especially in the downtown core. And now they have nowhere to go. Right.
Right.
So Oakville, until recently, really, we didn't have a lot of condo buildings at all. And they're like, oh, we kind of shot ourselves in the foot. I mean, that being said, they've just passed a build by our GO station. It's going to be bigger than the Scotia Plaza.
Wow.
So.
I can remember when I was very young at the corner of our street growing up, and I grew up at Yonge and Lawrence. Like I know Lesley, I know you know that area. There was like a Blockbuster, a Mr. Sub, and there was like this complex that they were going to tear down and build. It was like 6-story condos, right? It wasn't like a tower. I remember my parents and all of their friends literally picketed on the corner saying no condos, let's keep the neighborhood the way it was. Now, this was 15, 20 years ago. I don't know what it was. Now they all live in condos, but they just so happen to be downtown. And that whole area
Totally, right?
on, Avenue Road and Lawrence is become condos anyways. So
Yeah.
it's eventually going to happen, but it's just funny how you're at a moment in your life and this is what's important to you. And then at another moment in your life, you're like, maybe that actually would have been pretty nice right
But
now.
aren't you guys doing this all again right now with your premier there? Aren't you doing the exact same thing right now with that fella? Can I give my take on this from knowing nothing about it? But by the way, I know nothing about this. So
Please
You
do.
know a little bit.
I know from a peripheral, and I'll put my stupid opinion on top of it. I don't know who the players are. I don't know why it was chosen. I don't know anything. But here's what I saw. I saw everybody in Ontario going, we need more housing, we need more housing, we need more housing. Cut the red tape, cut the red tape, cut the red tape. And then Ford goes, cool. How about I just open up all this land for development? And then he does it overnight, basically. And then I would assume, I saw the news story like the next day where it's like, oh, well, you didn't do your due diligence, or which properties are open? It's like, wait a minute. You're now mad at him for not having enough red tape when he just opened up everything. Is that a controversial take on how this whole thing went down?
Les, you go first. I've got my opinions. I want to know what you think.
You go first. It's okay.
Okay. So I don't actually think, I think they met. It's not so much that all the red tape was removed. It was that allegedly, being very clear on my words here, people were given opportunities to buy up this land, potentially knowing this was coming. And the moment it happened, their land value went up 10x. And they may have been people that knew other people. That's probably the best way I can phrase it here. I'm not making any accusations. I think that's what they're...
Before Lesley answers, can I just toss out a question? Are you telling me that they may have got land that needs to be developed into the lands of developers?
Into the hands of developers?
Yeah. Did I say that wrong? Yeah, of course. That's what cutting red tape means. Let's get it off to the people that can build quickly.
Yeah, but there's always going to be somebody mad. I don't know.
Yeah.
Les, is any of that happening up in your neck of the woods? Like, are these areas where they're going to develop and people are mad about it?
I think people are mad about density level. So they're talking about down Trafalgar, like close to Dundas, like that will be as dense as Manhattan in Oakville. So they go from, this quiet rural suburb into like crazy density, like even close to the QEW, like what they're proposing, like a building of that size, right? Just they're lacking traffic studies, and we don't have the infrastructure in terms of like our transit systems aren't as good as they should be and things like that. I mean, Trafalgar, my whole life I've driven down Trafalgar to go to school, and it has always been a nightmare. And now they want to like increase it by hundreds of thousands.
I mean, we've already we've done that in Toronto, and I can tell you we don't have the infrastructure because my drive home every day is 11 kilometers and it takes me between 30 and 40 minutes. right?
It's
And then
crazy.
it's crazy. And like, so Les, we had the housing minister from BC on our podcast about a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
And his thing was basically like, and similar to what happened. I actually don't know your market. Are you guys able to build 3-4 units on a lot now, or has that not come to Oakville yet? Is that just Toronto?
Yeah, no, not here yet.
Not here yet. Okay. So, but then what the housing minister had said was like, listen, whether you like it or not, and this is just for BC, we're opening everything up. You can build 3-4 units on every lot, depending on, sewage and all that kind of stuff. And Steve is basically like, well, where am I going to park my car? Well, where are the 6 new people going to park their cars? How are we going to get more roads? Are we get more transportation? Like, how is this going to work? And the infrastructure seems to be the other side of the argument, where it's like, we all recognize and understand we need more housing. Like, it's clear. It's clear. You look at our immigration numbers, it's clear. But then how do we do both sides? How do we build more housing and build the infrastructure that it's like when the new housing is built, it's actually a decent quality of life?
Right.
I don't know if that's a question as much as a statement. Steve, you feel like that on the infrastructure, right?
Well, Ravi said, like, not a problem. You on housing? He did actually the exact opposite of what Justin Trudeau did the other day. Trudeau's like housing's not our problem. Like, what's going on there, right? Like, you guys got to think about this stuff all the way around. And they're just like, yeah. Like, something that's happening in my neighborhood now is when we moved in 10 years ago, there would be 3 or 4 cars parked on the street. And now you can't find street parking. And I don't know. And that's probably only been within the last 2 or 3 years. So either people are having bigger families, which I don't think is happening, renting out basements, which is probably more happening, putting in basement apartments, which is almost every single house in our neighborhood. But they don't seem to have a care for the rest of it. So it's getting back to the Doug Ford thing, when we're going to deregulate and just build houses faster, it's not going to make a lot of people happy. So do we want all the services that we need and want in our communities, or do we want houses built faster? I think right now we're trying to pick for houses built, and we'll figure out the rest of that some other time.
Are people from Oakville? So I know, people growing up in Toronto, they grew up in Toronto and then they realize they want to buy a house and they realize maybe they can't afford to buy the house they want. And then they start searching elsewhere and they start going outside the city. For people in Oakville that grew up there and they live there with their family and then want to remain in the area, like, can you get a condo for $500,000? Is it townhouse? Like, do these other properties exist? So it's not just all $2 million detached properties. Can you stay in where you were born?
I guess for our business, because we work predominantly by referral, and I'm like losing my centering.
Move the other way. Keep
a little bit more.
There you go. Hey,
so we have seen so much urban sprawl. So we literally sometimes have to so we meet with the client, ideally Oakville. Burlington is too expensive. Maybe they move to Hamilton. A lot of people move to Hamilton. Ancaster has a similar feel to Oakville. So we've seen a lot of people go over there. Beautiful place. And then as far as Brantford.
But they all kind of go west. They don't go east because it doesn't make sense. They got to go west.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get to Milton and then Guelph, and then you just keep going.
Milton, it would probably go in terms of price point, like Oakville to Milton to Burlington.
Interesting. Okay.
Right. So Milton, though, perceptually, people always feel like it is from, if you look at how far away geographically Milton is to Toronto, it is closer than Burlington. However, the transit system into Milton is dismal, right? So you only have commuter trains. So they run at commuter times versus if you're on the Lakeshore line, you have a lot more flexibility. So I always find that interesting.
I have a quick question. Oakville, maybe an Oakville specific question, maybe not. Can your mayor afford to buy in there? Have you seen that?
Oh my gosh, his house is up for sale.
Is it actually?
He's selling out?
Mm-hmm.
How much is the mayor's house up for sale for?
1.9.
1.9. Okay.
Hey, that's respectable these days. Because there was a story out there about that too, wasn't there, Tom?
Yeah. So Les, did you see this? So it was a perfect headline, the best clickbait headline of all time. And she seemed like a really nice person. I watched the interview. An Ontario mayor can't afford to buy in her own city. So she's the mayor of Wilmot Township, which I believe is outside Kitchener. I don't know this area at all. I've actually never heard of that before. I looked kind of further into this. So she makes $90,000 a year as the mayor of this town. She's also 28 years old. You know, she's not 45 years old, whatever. So she has student debt she's still dealing with. And I think the headline works so well because it's mayor can't afford to buy in their own town. But if you took the mayor part away and just said 28-year-old with $90,000 salary can't afford to buy in their own town, it'd be like, yeah, no shit. Like, you know, you need dual income or you need parental help or things like that. So there's a little bit more to it, but that's kind of funny that your mayor actually has their house up for sale.
Yes.
And the
It was
report,
funny because I was going to show it last week.
What did it say? They only looked at detached houses, and I was like, of course. How many 28-year-olds are going to afford a detached house? Well, no matter what their income is.
Yeah, I think it's obvious that if she was willing to buy a condo or something smaller, or because the whole thing was also that she lives with her parents, which was like, oh, well, you know, is your parents like, hey, mayor, like, go do your laundry? Like, that must be an interesting conversation. But I don't know her. I'm sure she's an awesome person. Like, kudos to her for becoming a mayor at 28. That's super impressive.
Totally.
And she's probably smart living at home, saving money, paying off the student debts. Like, that's all very clear. But the article took it in a way of like, mayor can't buy in their own town. If they want to buy a detached house at 28 years old with a $90,000 salary, they could rent with a friend. They could do other things. A lot of Congress people in the States rent because they're going back and forth between different places. So that's not like a crazy thing to say.
So Lesley, if I'm in your market and I have a $90,000 a year job, I'm 28 years old and I have a down payment, what am I buying?
A condo.
Yeah. 1 bed, 2 bed?
Maybe 2 bed.
Okay. Because what is that? What's the conversion on that right now?
And what you get approved for?
Oh.
4.5 times income, so
4.5-ish.
$50,000 mortgage.
So you would definitely not be in Oakville.
Oh, really? Like not even in a 1 bed? You can't. So let's say down payment.
If you had 20%.
Well, penny, okay,
at
so
least
like
10%.
you're probably minimum 500 in it. 520
for a 1 bed. Okay, so yeah, you're talking 1-bedroom apartment, which is probably where most 28-year-olds should be focused, unless they're moving somewhere else.
Well, that's what most are buying. We help those people all the time, and that, you know, they're buying their first property, or if they got in early because they had family money, then they're upgrading because they got into a relationship and have the dual income. That's like typically the path that we see. Les, I wanted to know, you know, the summer market's always an interesting market because things slow down. You know, people take time off, they're not really focused on real estate, and people come to assumptions of things are totally changing again, or, oh my God, the summer's actually been better than we thought. I don't think we can look at the summer and make like any valid big thing of like what's going on. What have you seen, you know, through July, through August in your market? Are things still moving or is it pretty quiet?
Our team had a pretty good run like the last few weeks, but overall, definitely showings are down the last couple of weeks. Yeah. July wasn't bad at all. In Oakville in general, you're going to see, especially in the luxury market space, and we always know this, like most of them are not here. Like they're in Muskoka or wherever they go. Foreign buyers ease off in August. Usually that's their vacation month. But things that are priced properly and show well sell.
Yeah.
You know, when working with buyers, it's still true. Like good product is just not available. And I find people are less and less willing to do the work, right? Like even if you show
100%.
them, hey, like there's great value in this property, you have to do X, Y, Z, not super onerous. If it's not presented in a perfect way, they're like, nah, on to the next. And buyers are pretty picky right now. I feel like consumer confidence is down and they want to find this perfect property. I'm like, no property is perfect. You could build it. It would not be perfect, you know?
Right.
It's just, but the expectation level is interesting, I find.
Do you find it's expectation level on both? Okay, so from buyers, because I was going to say, I'm coming across a ton of sellers right now that I don't really want to stage my place. I don't really want to do this work. I don't want to, and I'm sure in the luxury market or high end market, once you're, dealing with $3 and $4 and $5 million houses, that's probably not a big deal a lot of the time. Plus, you guys have a different version of staging than we do. But I'm coming across people that are like, this is as good as it gets. And I'm like, you understand you're going to sell for $50,000 less because you won't clean up your house. And they're like, yeah.
It's weird. It's always been our business model to stage. Like ever since we started this business, when staging was so not a thing and agents thought we were insane. So I feel like the people that are attracted to our team know that this is what we do. Like it's just part of what we do. So 99.9% of our listings we always stage. And if they're reluctant to do it, I just position it differently. Or I also just monetize it. Like, hey, it's your home. We're just here to advise you. But this is kind of what you're looking at with your net result. And it's extreme too.
It
I
makes
think
a
consumers
massive
today,
difference.
yeah.
So much.
I think the last, but by the way, the staging in Surrey is putting forks on the table, right, with a paper plate.
No.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Not at
I'm
all.
just kidding.
It is a massive difference, though. It is a massive difference because you guys
and in cost,
furniture
cost is the big thing.
In everything. Yeah, cost is huge. Like our staging is a consult. We send someone in, they do a full walk around of the house. They give them a list and they go, here's what you need to do to get ready. And the reason we do that is because our fees are not the same structure fees that you guys have, right? And I'm waiting to see if if there is someone that can emerge and charge 5% and be able to get that business model in, because staging is everything. Right now, only 10 out of 10s are selling. Right? We had a listing last week. We've got 12 listings, I want to say right now. I haven't had 12 listings since like 2014. And at this point, the 10 out of 10 listings are like 11 out of 10. Beautiful, most beautiful home probably we've ever sold. Multiple offers, no problem. Everything else is like, we're in negotiations for 4, 5, 6, 7 days now before we actually get an accepted offer. And then they may not come together on financing or whatever after the fact.
I've also found that a lot of sellers right now, when I'm going to them and saying like, okay, we've passed the period of time in which the average days on market was to know that if the market is reacting correctly to our price, here's basically our options. We hold tight, we make an adjustment. And a lot of the feedback that I've been getting, and I've been through this a few other times through different markets, is like, well, they can just make a low offer and we'll negotiate. But what I'm finding right now is that no, they're just not. They're not. If it's not within the zone, they're not even willing to come in low. They're just going to the next one. They're moving on.
They're not even coming to take a look right now. They're not even coming to like book a showing right now. And everybody's like, well, I had that too last week. I'm not going to lower my price. Just bring me an offer. I'm like, nobody's calling on your listing because there's 4 more that are listed a lot lower. So, and it's broken down like this. If you're going to go show your clients this week houses, and there's, how many are you going to show them? 4, maybe on a weekend. You're not going to show them 17. So if you're not within the top 4 in price, you're just not getting shown, period, right now. And then you have to be the best one out of those, because in our market, we've slipped firmly across the whole market into a balanced market. And I was doing an evaluation. I did 30 days. There was 76 listings, 4 sold.
Wow. In a specific price point or just area?
Area, just like overnight. Like it went from, there was, so what's
that months of inventory?
What is it, 18 months supply or something? Crazy. Now there's still a ton of people like listed at 1.7 when they're all selling at 1.4. So those people are, in my estimation, not even on the market. But it's just silly to think. Now, thankfully, those clients of mine are like, they're like, we understand. We know what it needs, and they're realistic. But there's so many people that are just like, well, bring me an offer. I'm like, you're at 1.6. They're never going to bring you an offer because they're not showing anything listed over 1,399. And they just don't get it. So they're digging in their heels. I actually had to walk away from some business multiple times recently, because they wanted such a high price. I just said, I'm not willing to do it. So sorry, I don't want your business. This has happened many times in the last month. And then they ended up listing with other agents for dramatically less than I told them. Like, so I actually feel like I've been helping them get sold with no money on my own, because it took the rejection from me saying, I'm sorry, I don't want your business unless it's this price. And then they did list eventually lower with someone else. Probably not a good business strategy on my side of things.
Yeah, Steve, you might want to tune up your listing presentation.
But there's one more side of it. The other side of it is, I don't believe, so they did get sold. I think I helped them in my own way get there, but I don't believe they have anywhere to go on the other side, because they were saying, I want this much house in this area for this much price. And I'm like, that is never going to happen. So they did get sold for what I thought was a very good, what I would have taken the listing at, except it took me rejecting them. Now I think they're going to end up renting.
This episode of the Tom Storey Show is brought to you by none other than my co-host, Steve Karrasch and Karrasch Real Properties. Look at that. He's got a mug he can give you if you reach out to him. You know, in all seriousness, you know, I make jokes with Steve all the time on the show, and we have a lot of banter. But the reality is, if you are someone looking to buy in Surrey or the surrounding areas, this is the guy you have to talk to. He understands what's happening. He has well over a decade in the industry, even though he still looks kind of young. Not that young, but kind of young. His team is amazing. They are experts. And whether you are buying tomorrow or you are buying in 2 years from now, what I know is that it's a no pressure operation, right? They're going to give you the information you need. And when you're ready, they will be there with you and take you to the finish line. They're going to roll out the red carpet for you. And Steve knows what he's doing. And if I personally was buying a property there, this is the only person that I would trust to call. He's someone I've also sent my clients as well. So if you want to connect with Steve and his team in Surrey and the surrounding areas, you can go into the first link in the description. And Steve, what do they do when they get to that link?
Well, you can book a call with me using that link in the description at a time that works best for you. It's really simple. You just pick the time, enter in your phone number, email address. I'll give you a call at the time. And yeah, we'll see how we can help you out.
We also know that a lot of real estate agents listen to this show as well. So you have clients that are moving out to Steve's direction. Make sure to reach out to him as well to see if he can help them throughout their journey. I know they will roll out the red carpet for your clients as well.
Okay, Tom, there's only one thing I want you to clarify. Mm-hmm. First of all, how do you say it? It's the
Fraser, like Razor Valley.
Fraser Valley. So if you are in North Delta, Surrey, Langley, Abbotsford, White Rock, or Mission, give me a call. But Tom, this communication is not intended to cause or induce breach of any agency agreement. Existing agency agreement. I almost had it. And I'm glad I'm not the agent that helped them through that process.
How are you finding sellers right now, Lesley? Are they being realistic on prices, or do they want the May numbers that might not exist?
Depends on the seller for sure.
Yeah.
My sellers who, were adamant about buying prior to selling are always, much more open to a reasonable price.
Yeah.
I do think like some people are just stuck on the market kind of has to beat them up a little bit, right?
Yep.
Generally, I really don't like to take overpriced listings, just like you, Steve. Like it's just not, it's a waste of my time, waste of my mental energy, all of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So we don't typically take stuff that's too high, but yeah, we still have a couple sellers that are totally oblivious to the fact that we've had 2 interest rate hikes and the market is slowing for sure. And we're also starting to see like people that are like squeezed really hard and they need to sell. Like it's coming.
Why are they squeezed? Because they have a variable rate?
People who bought like variable rates, they bought when it was 1.6, whatever. And now cost of living is so expensive. Their mortgage is so expensive and they just can't hold on forever, right? Like they're looking down the line, like how long can I carry this stuff for?
That's interesting. Because that's what a lot of us have kind of been saying is that, the static variables where it didn't fully make you pay as much, but most of it was going to interest, that was kind of propping up the market. And there was a lot of people that maybe haven't been vocally talking about that they've got 6 months, 12 months, 16 months left before they really have to do something, and selling the asset would take them out of that situation. Do you believe then that, as we head into the end of this year and next year, there's going to be more people that have no choice other than to sell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. Or if they're smart, they sell, right?
Yeah. And
I'm
downsize or change their life or do something, right?
Totally. Yeah.
I'm terrified that people just hang on too long. Lesley, recently we did a interview with a bankruptcy trustee, and it was just like, yeah, we can get you out of this, but you're not going to like the answer.
Oh, I listened to
And
that.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But it's like he can usually get them out. The answer is usually selling their home and then figuring out something else, but nobody's willing to give up the pride of whatever, right? Like I know there are some people that I've been speaking to that are chewing into now, luckily, lots of savings, but riding that variable rate, hoping for it to come down. Tom Storey, I'm telling you, it's not coming down anytime soon.
It might go up again.
What do you think? Let's do our predictions. Is this episode coming out before the next? I don't know.
Yes, it is. It's coming out. Yeah, it is. I think.
When is the next?
September 6th, I believe.
September.
I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think Ben Tal said there may be another 25-point hike, but then that means the rate cuts will then start happening sooner. So you might actually want that hike.
Sure.
So my official answer is they're done. I know inflation jumped up from 2.8 to 3.3, but that was like the base year. Anyways, I'm not going to bore you guys with that, but we saw this coming. Foch did a whole breakdown on it. But
you think they're done?
I think they're done. Yeah.
I think you're insane.
I think they're done.
I think there's another one coming.
Lesley knows what the hell she's talking about.
I do.
Maybe I should have answered.
They just want to hammer Canadians, eh? Just hammer everyone that's got to borrow money.
They're hammering all of us, but maybe we had it too good for too long. And now this is the lesson that Canadians need to learn.
I don't think we had it too good for too long. I think they were too stupid for too long and kept them down too long. Like you could have told a year in advance, in 2021, they started, quarter point. You know what? Economy's not so bad. Quarter point. Here we go. I had the board that was behind me in my old videos. I had it said hashtag make money expensive again for like 3 months because it was just like, guys, what's going on? And then they did, remember January 2022? And I was like, everybody, can we please do a quarter? And they didn't do it. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, they waited till March.
And then March was like straight up in price. Like it was absolutely insane. Tom, I think it's only as insane as you not thinking there's another quarter point coming on September I'm trying to look for it right now.
I think it's the 6th or maybe the 13th.
It's the 6th. I'm pretty sure it's the 6th.
Yeah.
But I think the best line out of that podcast was, what were you thinking when it was 2% and you didn't lock in? And when he said that, I was like, so true. Like, how did we not just blast that across all our social media? If you're in variable, lock in now.
I don't know. I think because, we were riding that momentum of thinking things are good and there's no way they can go up that fast that it's worth it now. I had actually at the very beginning of the rate hikes, I had a client reach out to me and he's like, I think he was on a variable. He did lock in at one point, but he's like, should I take the 10-year right now? And the 10-year was at 4% or something. But there was still a massive gap at the moment. And I was like, I have no clue. Talk to a mortgage broker. I don't actually know what he did, but that could have been foresight to making a really good decision. And talking about how expensive it is just to live life right now. Habitat for Humanity. I don't know if you saw this, Lesley. You can now qualify for their programs if you make $100,000 income. It's
crazy,
shot up.
It's
crazy. Just I guess in Oakville, a lot of people had money and they're probably doing okay. It's the people that are on the cusp maybe they're having a tough time. But the average Canadian right now, it's gotten bad. I've been very clear. I like this.
Running out of rope. That's simple what it is. We're running out of rope at some point. But you have to remember the only way the interest rates come down is if the rope gets yanked out of a whole bunch of people's hands. It's the only way it happens. So until that happens, and it's not happening, still people are buying new trucks. Still people are going. Did you see Air Canada just profits through the roof? Air Canada hasn't been profitable in 50 years. And this quarter, no problems. So
I don't know. They're canceling all their flights. I don't know how they're so profitable.
I guess you just keep that ticket
Just for me, they just cancel my flights.
I don't know. I think that like people in Oakville too, right? I mean, you make more, you spend more. And it's really hard. I don't know if you see this, if you're into this kind of into your career, Tom, yet, or Steve. But when you start working with downsizers and they're like, oh, I still have like a couple $100,000 line of credit, so I want to pay that off and buy whatever. And then at the end of the process, they're keeping their line of credit. You know what I mean? Because they don't want to like scale back their lifestyle. So I don't know.
I work with a lot. So I've bought 2 books of business from retired agents. So I work with a ton of downsizers, a ton of people going into estates and stuff. And I am shocked when I see, it's very common that I'll go in and I'll see a house bought in 1999 for $199,000. And it's right now worth 1.4, and they owe $850 on it. Super common. And then they're like, well, what am I going to buy? I want to be mortgage free. I'm like, I don't know. Well, if you're lucky, a 2-bed, 2-bath condo. And they're like,
what did they do? Did they refi and buy a bunch of investment properties? Because you could argue that maybe was a good thing long term, but why did that change? What happened?
Everybody's different, but I mean, I think it's just not knowing your money, not knowing what to do, spending too much, buying another car. We'll just pop that one on the, here's when anybody refinances their car into their mortgage, what you have to remember is what you're doing is you're now taking that payment and spreading it out over 25 years. So, my interest rate's lower here. It's not like you're still going to pay it off in that 3 or 4 years. And by the way, it's 8 years now for most car payments, right? So they just keep tossing it in. Here's a boat. Here's a this. Here's a that. The kids needed help. And next thing you know, their retirement is spent just little by little over many years. It's not uncommon for me to find people who bought a home more than 30 years ago and their mortgage is more than double of what they paid for it.
You know, what's interesting is I actually had a conversation yesterday, a meeting with her tomorrow. She owns a condo in a good neighborhood of Toronto. And when we were on the phone, we were talking about, values and whatever, when she bought it. And she kind of said to me in like a way like, yeah, I still have a mortgage on it, as if she was almost like, didn't want to tell me that. Like as if it was like an embarrassment that it hadn't been paid off yet. So I don't know. Maybe, but then you hear all these other reports that like 50% of homes in Toronto are owned free and clear. Not the people that are calling me, I guess. Les, do you invest in real estate?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Has that been like a goal from day one to not just sell it, but buy it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
And did someone teach you that, or was that your family, or like, how did you figure out how to just do that from the beginning?
Just being in this industry. So my family or our parents are not involved in real estate, like, although the 3 of us are. If anything, my dad worked on Bay Street his whole life and was anti-real estate. I don't think he was super enthralled with the fact that all 3 of us went into real estate and he paid for our school. He was like, well, you don't even need schooling. But no, I mean, that's where the money is, right? Build. There's lots of people here in Oakville who build and make good profit on that, or have investment properties. I do believe in diversifying for sure.
So, okay, so it's not all in real estate. You've got your investment spread out. Okay. Any GICs recently at 4.5%? Any interest there?
I do have some money in that.
Okay. Me too, which I had never ever considered until recently.
I've shifted a bunch of money there, and I actually have a bank appointment tomorrow to shift a bunch more into like I think they're last time I checked they were 4.65, so I'm waiting to see where they're at when I go down there, because I'm assuming they're going to go back up.
There's also quite a few accounts that are like near 4 to 4.3% where you could take the money out. It's not locked in. It's a little bit lower depending on, anyways. Again, not
actually
financial
that's what
advice.
I have. Actually,
I have that too.
To buy other real estate.
Yes, I didn't want to be locked in, so
I found it. I found it here. So it is September the 6th at 10 a.m. They're going to do the press release version, and then TIFF is doing a actual press conference speech in Calgary the next day. So it's not going to be one of those ones where they do it at the same time.
Well, it doesn't matter in Calgary because their prices are like what they were at peak. Nothing's changing over there. I'm not sure what's going on. It's all the Toronto
What have you guys'
people.
prices done in this summer though? What have they?
Have you?
Like,
Did
where
you
are you
drop
guys
off
at?
since May?
Did we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
For sure.
significantly?
Yeah.
Mm.
July was pretty flat. It was up a bit in June, but we're kind of seeing it's probably down 5%.
Okay. Interesting. So that happened pretty quickly then. So that's now the issue between buyers and sellers of sellers still kind of want the June number and buyers are like, well, no, there's lots of options. I'm going to hang tight.
Mm-hmm. We've
And which
definitely
metric?
seen a slowdown.
Like what numbers do you go off of to look at that? Because this is a controversy that Tom and I have constantly. He uses
Median price is the best
which-
because it takes out the outliers.
I think median is the stupidest metric out of all three between average, median, and benchmark.
Well, maybe
So
benchmark's technically the best.
yeah, thank you, Tom.
Oh, well, I use the median, so that's fine. But it's
I
also
still-
different.
I prefer
It's
median.
different. It's different houses, like different areas I've seen fall
Mhm.
off. So like something like downsizer condos in Oakville, for example, because we really only have like 5 buildings. We haven't seen the same kind of hit on that, right? So we saw a lot of downsizers sell and then had nowhere to go. So they're like, we've been in multiple offers on these things.
On condos.
Not condos, like new build condos
Okay.
for your generation, specifically certain buildings only for downsizers. Like that, like the average like person would be like 75.
And what's the price points in
In the
those
building.
buildings?
So they kind of range from 800 to upwards to closer to 2 million. Kind of.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, that's interesting that even at those price points, it's still competitive just because there's nothing to choose from.
Like we literally had a client who overpaid for a condo, not contrary to our advice, because they were so worried that somebody else was going to come in and that person would take a different offer, even though they weren't actually in that moment in competition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because
Sometimes
they've been
people just
looking
want
for
what they
2
want.
months, but there was nothing to buy.
Yeah.
So that goes into the argument of like good inventory and the shortage of that.
Tom, I wanna go over my numbers here with you real quick because our board stats are here and everybody is crapping on the Fraser Valley for a massive drop. So our average price across all asset classes in the Fraser Valley went down exactly $100,000 last month, which is about 9%, maybe 8.5%.
Wow.
But our benchmark price went up $6,000.
What about the median, the most important metric of the medians?
Median went down 50,000.
50,000.
So
Gotcha.
it went down half of what the average. So average dropped 100,000, median dropped half of that, and benchmark stayed about the same. So explain that to me.
I just don't think it matters because you can't look at 2 months of data and come to a conclusion on anything. Like it's a period of time during the summer. I don't think it matters. I think you need way more data than that to even say anything.
Yeah, that could be.
You shouldn't be making your buying or selling, maybe selling decisions if you're trying to figure out prices, but buying decisions on a month of data is like, because it could change the next month. It could then go up 15% the next month using those numbers, right?
So Lesley, where do you think we're going to be in September, October, November? You are not held to this by any means.
Okay, so
Just
people
in
in
the
my
YouTube
office think that
comments.
we're going to see like some people feel like we're going to see kind of like an uptick in September with buyers. I actually think that it's going to be kind of a rough 6 months. I think that prices will probably continue to drop.
And why is that?
That's my gut feel.
Is there specific reasons why? Just from what the conversations you're having?
Yeah, it's just consumer confidence. Like I had an offer last night on a property that's super saleable with an SPP. I was like, we're not quite there yet.
Right.
So no, but it's just we're having lots of conversations with people who are like, we think we were going to have to sell because we can't afford our house, things like that, right? So
When did those people buy? Have they bought since the pandemic, or are they people that owned
yes,
that house? Okay,
Yeah.
so
interesting.
people who over leverage themselves.
But not people that
Yeah,
bought, say, 2017, 2018.
no, and there's quite a few divorces happening. So we also have
Yeah.
that where,
Yeah.
somebody wants to keep the property, but they really can't hold on to it at the interest rates at, right? So separations and in people kind of like under the age of 55, where the equity is limited in the property.
There was 2 recent reports that I wanted to read you, and I just wanted your breakdown on these, Les. So the first one says stalled Oakville and Burlington seeing drop in house prices and big dips in home sales. And then a few days later, can't buy what's not available. House prices rising in Oakville and Burlington. So
Same publication or different publication?
Different publications.
Oh, okay.
But still pretty funny. And I know we had talked about this, and like, are the Oakville real estate numbers wrapped up? Are they including Burlington and Toronto? Is it all screwed up? Like, how do you actually make a conclusion on prices in Oakville? Do you have your own real estate board that you use? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So there's 2 boards. So we have our local boards. So there's the Oakville Milton board, the Real Estate Association of Hamilton Burlington. They're all part of the regional boards. They all share data with the rest of Ontario. And then you have the mega board TREB, who isolates itself and will not allow data sharing because they want to take over all the small boards. And frankly, maybe in some ways it'd be easier because we have to always check both boards. And not everybody is members of all these different boards. So there was a point where I was a member of the Hamilton, Burlington, Oakville, and Toronto. But
So
Burlington,
were you putting
Oakville
one
data
listing
share.
on all 3 boards?
Mm-hmm.
And would it not populate 3 times on Realtor.ca
Yeah.
because
So
of
if
that?
you go and
Yeah.
look at Oakville listings, most of them are going to populate twice on Realtor.ca.
Silly.
But there's always a percentage of listings that are only on TREB or only on Burlington. Because like, as you know, there's realtors from everywhere. Like you don't just have your local realtor that's doing the one neighborhood anymore, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
People trade all over the place. So for myself, I gravitate always to the Oakville board first and then look on TREB. So when we do a listing, like I literally have to go through, if it was in Oakville, for example, all the Oakville listings compared to all the Toronto listings and pick out which ones are on which boards and then create my own statistics because you can't just use one set of data. It doesn't actually apply. And the further you go west, the least likely they are to be members of TREB because it's going to be less relevant to them. Mm-hmm. But in the last couple of years, it's becoming more important to be on TREB no matter where you are, right?
Is that mostly because the sellers are saying like, we want people from Toronto to see our listing? Is that why?
Yeah, but also because there's so many people that are selling in these areas that are only members of TREB. So you have someone like a Mississauga agent. They might be part of the Mississauga board, but they're probably just like on TREB. And then they list in Oakville, which is fair. Like it's pretty close, or Burlington. And then you're never going to see that listing. Literally, there's so many listings that are only on one board. It's actually quite painful.
It is so insane to me. So we have 3 boards in the Lower Mainland, Chilliwack, Fraser Valley, where I am, in Vancouver. And when I list a property on the other side of the river, I submit that to the Vancouver board. Now, those buggers over there do charge me more than my own board does, and we don't charge Vancouver agents back, which I think is a big issue. Probably get me in trouble for saying that publicly, but it's just we all work together. And I mean, they got 20,000 agents, we got 5,000 agents, but if they have now, there's other issues that come along with that, but There is no like I get to put it on this board or that board or pick. I don't understand how they can't all play nice together. Oh, if it's in Oakville, it should be the Toronto agent that wants to list in Oakville should put it on the Oakville MLS. That would make sense.
But they're not a part of the board.
But
No.
but boards can just be friends. Like that's what we are. I'm not a part of the Vancouver board.
They can interboard, so
True.
they can pay to interboard the property. But
I'll tell you, when I see an interboard listing in Toronto, I'm like, that agent doesn't know what they're doing. If my client likes that property, I'm excited because they don't know this area at all. Let's go get that one. It's almost like a tell. Like this is going to be an easy one to help my client out. My opinion, at least. My opinion.
That's hilarious.
Anyway.
Lesley, I got to ask you one final question because we got to ask you one thing controversial to get a clip out of this podcast.
I've only got
Wasn't
3
there lots
possible
of
titles.
controversial
Yeah,
things?
don't worry.
There was actually some good stuff. There's some really good stuff. You've been awesome. Because, and this is kind of like giving a little sneak peek to the listeners as well. A few episodes from now, we're having the current president of OREA, the Ontario Real Association, and the past president both on at the same time to talk about the new wellness program or health coverage program for real estate agents. There has been a bit of an uproar from this on the online community. Lesley, have you heard about this? Do you have any thoughts about this, or would you rather stay quiet about this?
I actually have not even engaged with this at all.
Okay, I'll fill you in later.
Good for you.
No. It's not terrible because a lot of people are in that position. Essentially, it's a mandatory program where our fees for OREA go up $600 a year. It's going to be great for a lot of people, but a lot of people, their main thing is that it shouldn't be mandatory. And there's a little bit of stuff going on online right now. We're going to try and get to the bottom of it when we interview them. But it's certainly interesting.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Is it good health coverage, though?
Well, again, there's different opinions on that. Some people say yes, some people say no, depending on your age, depending if the premium goes up. Like we got lots of questions we got to figure out here.
Lesley, I'm actually really, really excited to do this one coming up because I have no dog in this fight. And I get to look at it from like, you aren't my regulator and you're also not going to take money out of my pocket. And Tom, I don't care if you have to pay more money. So I get to, it's going to be fantastic.
But I wonder, like on the fringe, which is terrible, and don't put this in the podcast, but will it like
don't say anything you are about to want deleted because we don't delete anything. If you want to say it after we hang up, go for it.
Okay. You want to wait till we stop recording.
Okay.
Les, this was so much fun. I appreciate you coming on. I knew
it
you'd
was
be an
great.
awesome,
Loved it.
I knew you'd be an awesome guest, and I appreciate you saying yes to this. For anyone that's listening that wants someone that understands, grew up, and really knows the market in Oakville to reach out to you and your team, what's the best place for them to go?
They can go to our website, kendysisters.ca.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
for watching this. If you're on YouTube, if you're listening on the audio platforms, hope you have an amazing day, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Lesley. That was awesome.